удары по ядерным объектам заставляют сейчас, конечно...
The strikes on nuclear facilities forced the Iranians to think about the physical protection of nuclear materials, which, I repeat, are under the IAEA's control and cannot be touched. Regrettably, Israel and the United States still went ahead with the strikes, creating physical risks and undermining the authority of the IAEA and the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which, as Iran has noted repeatedly, is mandatory for Iran. The IAEA has exerted unprecedented control, especially in the past years, after the signing of the JCPOA. Iran was never found violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty or its agreement on guarantees with the IAEA. All risks and political tensions emerged after the United States withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018, 3 years into its term. Europeans are using underhand means to turn the case around and claim that the sanctions imposed on Iran before the JCPOA have been reinstated. While doing so, they are leaving aside the fact that it was the United States that terminated the program 9 years ago. We are concerned about the UN Secretariat's attempts to play along. Iran is ready to guarantee a return to purely fuel and energy needs under IAEA oversight. The agency must demonstrate its commitment to the principles by which its secretariat operates. However, following the strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities during the 12-day war in June 2025, the agency has not stated its position, despite the fact that these facilities were under its safeguards. This does nothing to enhance the agency's credibility, which is regrettable. We place great value on the work of the Secretariat, and we would not want to see the agency, at this critical juncture, deviate from its principles or attempt to politicize its activities in any way. The Board of Peace was announced in autumn 2025. The United States submitted the corresponding draft to the UN Security Council. Together with our Chinese colleagues, we introduced our amendments. Their primary goal consisted of making sure that the way this Board of Peace operates, its goals and program are based on the existing consensus-based UN resolutions. But the authors refused to accept these amendments and spoke out in favor of acting in a more assertive manner. The Palestinians themselves and all Arab countries asked Russia and China not to block this resolution. This is why Moscow and Beijing abstained. There are some indications that members of Hamas may be prepared to seek compromise. As far as I understand, Israel maintains that Hamas should cease to exist as either a military or political entity. Hamas, much like Hezbollah in Lebanon, is nevertheless part of political life. One may disagree with such views, but there are many countries where figures holding radical positions occupy leadership roles. Of course, the manner in which the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip will proceed is of critical importance. Proposals have been made to transform it into some kind of a Middle Eastern Riviera, or a casino or resort zone. Plans have also been discussed to resettle Palestinians in Somalia, Indonesia, Iraq, Egypt, or Jordan. Such matters require extreme caution. Our information suggests that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians wish to remain where they were born, where their ancestors lived and are buried. Yet this requires rebuilding Gaza, which has been devastated. Resettlement elsewhere may be unavoidable given present conditions, but guarantees must be in place to ensure that Palestinians will return, housing will be reconstructed, and the infrastructure and essential services restored promptly. We are ready to contribute to these efforts. I understand that President of the United States Donald Trump responded positively when informed of this initiative, saying it was a good idea. However, since then, the Americans have not confirmed their president's assessment. We have submitted an official note requesting that this be treated as consent and instruction to allocate $1 billion of our funds toward projects in Gaza. Naturally, we have requested transparency regarding specific projects. We do not want our funds to be allocated for anything other than the basic needs of the civilian population: housing, clinics, schools, and related necessities. As for our military facilities, discussions are ongoing. Let me reiterate, the Syrians are keen for our presence to endure. These sites, while no longer purely military in function as they were prior to December 2025, remain well suited for repurposing as humanitarian hubs. Syria serves as a convenient transit point. We stand ready to channel our humanitarian aid, including that destined for Africa, through these facilities. We would welcome other states likewise availing themselves of these operational platforms to direct humanitarian and other civilian freight toward the African continent. Europe hysterically demands that Russia start talks and that all sides agree that Europe must be part of these talks. What can we talk about with Europeans who openly say that Ukraine is upholding European values? It is like telling a judge of an international court that they know that the EU is a Nazi organization. Nobody in Europe will lift a finger to force Kiev to abolish the laws that ban the Russian language in all spheres and the canonical Orthodox Church. The priority of a settlement in Ukraine, which Europe is currently considering and promoting, boils down to the security guarantees for Ukraine that are formulated precisely against Russia. In other words, Europe wants to guarantee Ukraine's security as long as the Kiev regime remains an enemy of the Russian Federation and wages a war against us, a war which the EU wants to continue. Different statements have been made in Munich, but their essence is the same: Russia is an enemy, and Ukraine must finish off Russia. Alexander Stubb, the current president of Finland, once a neutral state but now one of the main Nazi leaders, has said that Ukraine is doing everything correctly and must continue fighting to finish off Russia. The president of Finland has said this. What can we say about this politician? I don't think there is any need to comment on what Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky did in Munich. Those who read or listen to his statements will see that this person does not want peace. He has openly said this. We will discuss the understandings reached in Alaska during our talks with the Americans in Geneva. They are based on the recognition of the root causes of the conflict and the need to remove them. No NATO membership for Ukraine, and no attempts to overturn the decision of the people in Donbass, who chose to reunite with Russia amid their total discrimination, when the Kiev regime adopted laws aimed at eradicating everything Russian and canonical orthodoxy. What does Volodymyr Zelensky declare? He asserts that he will not relinquish Donbass and will never acknowledge what Russia has seized de jure. He insists we must halt at the line of contact, yet everything Russia has taken they will regard as theirs and will endeavor to reclaim these territories. And what of the people residing in these areas whom you have labeled terrorists? More recently, in a post-Munich interview, he was even more blunt, asserting that Europe and the United States were mistaken not to expel all individuals of Russian origin from their territories. He even uttered a four-letter word on air, unabashedly. Perhaps he was under considerable pressure that morning. Against this backdrop, Europeans in the Munich hotel hall rose to their feet, applauding his diatribes. President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly affirmed that one day, perhaps, we will converse with Europe again. But this will occur once they regain their senses, and we will see what they bring to the negotiating table. French President Emmanuel Macron stated that he had resolved to engage with Russia. He dispatched his envoy here, requesting confidentiality, but, as ever, the French later disclosed it themselves. Nothing groundbreaking was articulated by this envoy, the same points reiterated in public discourse. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz remarked that they would eventually reach an accord with Russia, though for now, it allegedly does not want talks. A man makes such statements, seemingly oblivious to the fact that Russia's actions speak plainly. We have convened repeatedly with the Americans. We met with Ukrainian representatives in Istanbul in May, June, and July 2025. We proposed enhancing the negotiation platform, elevating the level of negotiators, and establishing 3 working groups on military, political, and humanitarian aspects. The Ukrainians initially remained silent, then in November 2025 declared they would no longer engage with Russia in Istanbul. What then? Meanwhile, Europeans indoctrinate their electorates that it is Russia derailing the talks. We are not seeking war. We do not want war. But if our European neighbors, instead of acknowledging their mistakes and recognizing that we will have to coexist, if instead of that understanding they prepare for war against us, as they have declared, then President Putin has spoken on this topic more than once. He has reiterated that we are conducting a special military operation in Ukraine. But if they want war, it will be a very different kind of war, with very different means.